Going
That's
live
okay.
here. Agency, if there's ever been a man of privilege, it is your man Exmo Joe. But today, and I'm trying to check my privilege, but today I am privileged to have Jules Treasures with me here today. Jules, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Joe? Or Exmo
I'm
Joe?
doing okay. Yeah, you call me Joe. You call me Exmo Joe. I don't require that anybody call me First Herald yet, but I've decided that if I have a styling as First Herald of the Church of Korihor, it should be the pretentious, similar to like the Reverend or the Right Reverend, the pretentious Joe Rollins, First Herald of the Church of Korihor. But yep, agency, we're talking church for atheists again. I know some of you tune in for the content that is strictly true crimey, but we're going to come back to that stuff because I've been launching the Church of Korihor the last few weeks, and it's just been amazing. Those of you who tune in live tonight, you're certainly welcome to tune in tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Utah time, here in the unholy land. We're going to have what's that?
Mountain Standard Time.
That's right. That's right. And we're going to have the second ever Sunday sermon of the Church of Korihor, delivered by our very own Jenny Gage, director of the Church of Korihor. She also is the host of the podcast and or the YouTube channel Life Take Two. She's an ex-Mormon also, ex-Mormon, ex-trad wife. And she'll be delivering the second sermon, as we were calling Nuclear Family Fallout. We're going to talk about why the traditional values of yesteryear, Judeo-Christian family values, have finally made it into the rearview mirror. And as a godless church, we are going to move into the future without being tethered down to what family used to be. So I am very excited personally when she told me, Joe, will I ever give sermons for the Church of Korihor? And I was like, oh, thank goodness somebody else is going to give sermons. So join us tomorrow at 10 a.m. Today, I want to talk to Jules Treasures. I'm passing the mic as much as I can to trans people to educate me on what, first of all, do we need ceremonies in a church that celebrate the transition of a person's gender identity. And so I am here to ask Jules so she can inform me. Her pronouns are she, hers, hers. I did ask. So Jules, do you think that there should be a ceremony to celebrate transition?
I believe there should be one. Many people, I think feel left out because people do discriminate a lot against the trans community. And, a lot of people will say that we don't even exist, that, it shouldn't even be possible. So I think some recognition is a great idea in doing that transition. Maybe being able to kind of find a type of ceremony as showing from who were assigned at birth to who you are now, who you feel, you truly are.
Okay. So you feel like your gender at birth, your assigned gender at birth, should be a part of the ceremony, like symbolically, like this is what
symbolically. I think the symbolism should be in as like, as they always say, it's your dead name or your dead self to your, your new name, your new self, or your true self.
Right. So it's interesting because like I had originally envisioned it as a name ceremony, and I thought, well, and that's like that seems like a very much like a cisgender hetero focused perspective of it. Oh, you change your name, change your pronouns. It's like, okay, well, it's more about. It seems to me like it's more about the true self within emerging in the ceremony. Is that wrong, or what do
Correct.
you think?
I think that's a very good way to say it. It's, that true self emerging would be a great way to celebrate it.
What do you think should be, what would it look like for you? Like if something were to warm your heart or make the light glow in you about the idea of imagining if Jules could have a transition ceremony, what would that look like?
Um, that's a very good question. It'd be a like a celebratory time to really recognize the true self. Like even if it's just getting together, speaking about it, you know, uh, celebrating it in a way that people will know.
Hmm.
Um, it could be just a small get together. No, I don't know any specific ritual which I would think of. Uh, I think you'd just be really recognizing the true person.
Hmm. Okay. So what I'm getting from you then, it seems to me, is that like it should be kind of individualized. It should be more
Yeah,
about coming up with something like arranging what actually lights up the heart light of that individual person, and then doing that, planning it out and doing that.
that was a great word to use. Individualized. I'm a nurse, and that's basically how we focus on our patients. Each person is individual. You have to tailor your healthcare to someone individualistic. It's not like every person that comes in with. I always like to give the example of chest pain. You're not going to treat everybody the same. Um, you might, you know, in the short term, you may do, the initial tests, but each person is going to be an individual, and it's going to, focus individually as you do the care on that person. So each individual should get, what it would tailor to what they would like to express about themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like I'll give you throw you out some of the ideas I had, and so you could just shoot them down and say, Joe, that was the dumbest thing I ever heard of. And then otherwise we'll put it on the list, and then somebody else can tell me that's the dumbest thing I ever heard of, and then we just won't do that for that person. But I thought like
Okay.
one example could be something where you take the name of the person, the name of the true self, and you
Hmm.
have the celebrants, you have the people, the congregation who are gathered together for the ceremony. They lend something creative to making something that the person can keep long term. So I was thinking maybe like if you had your name, or even just a big blank canvas of some kind, something that's like a mural size, something you could put like hang in your home somewhere, and it could be like the centerpiece of something. And then you could have like, and
Right.
then the person being celebrated might get like a pack of markers or paintbrushes with colors or something like that, or paint
Hmm.
pens or something, and go out and hand one that you recognize that color with a certain person. And you go out to people who are special and important to you, that you're grateful that they have come to celebrate your transition, and give it to that person, knowing that whatever they put on there, whatever they color in, whatever they draw, whatever they mark on that mural, in that color, that's their color. And then just hand out these colors to people as your gift, is an opportunity for them to come up and to illustrate their support and their love of you, and as the self, as that person. Bad idea.
Actually, that's a good idea because um, what I like is the whole canvas thing is as you're transitioning, there's so much work you can look at it. It's almost like a canvas that you're developing this whole new, basically almost like a new person, different, than what you were assigned at birth. and there's all these steps that one has to take, and you're putting this picture together. I think it all goes back to like you've seen the categories on my channel, in which you said we would talk about later. But I said I bought a white vehicle because it's my canvas and I can tailor it to myself. And I think that's a great idea because it's something that'll be tailored to each individual, and it'll show their, kind of like their personality, themselves come out in it.
I love that. So I'm getting from that then that you like the idea, first of all, of being
Mhm.
something creative, celebrating transition as a creative act, as well as a self, a revealing act. It's an act of revealing the true self, right?
Correct. And that comes because each person, like you said, is an individual, uh, and everybody will, tends to present in a different way. Some people, will, do makeup with more as opposed to less. I've gone with less. I have a friend, and she does like abstract artwork. She'll put abstract and do hers like that on her face. And it's a
Mhm.
very good way of getting stress out.
Mm. Mm. Cool. Another thing that I had thought about, then just throw this out there, see what you think, is that it would be wonderful to add some to do a song, either singing, either the person being celebrated is singing, though maybe not, because I mean, like some people are, as I understand it, a lot about the transition is finding your voice in
Correct.
as you want to be heard and as you want to be sound. So maybe some people would sing and would want to sing where other people would not. But another thing I was thinking is, or to be sung too, do like a serenade thing, and like have somebody who is like we're playing around with the idea of like a cantor position in the clergy, which
Mhm.
is and I don't want to use that word because of course that's appropriating from Jewish culture, but I'm thinking we've been thinking calling them a rhapsodist or maybe a bard or
Mhm.
something like that. And then you have basically we'll have a song. I was thinking we could have a song that you customize to the person's name, and and then we have this person come out and sing to you on stage, and at some point maybe the congregation joins in and everybody sings. What do you think?
I think that's a good idea. I think people feel appreciated in that, Uh, in my case, I wouldn't sing because I'm horrible at singing. I'm a left brainer, so I'm not artistic. So, in my case, I would say sung to, because it also
Okay.
makes you feel appreciated. You know, that's what I would say with that.
As long as it's
Uh,
something that made you feel not put on the spot, right? I mean, that's kind of like the thing too, right?
right.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
You did say something about what if you said something that really struck me that I hadn't considered at all, which was, well, or I barely considered if I had, which was maybe the person being celebrated would get up and speak and say something. Do you think that that's something that makes sense for people to be able to get up and speak their truth somehow?
Yeah, they can tell their story, or that'll be like a big individual type of thing. Some of them don't like to think about, some people that are trans don't like to think about, sorry about my heater, it's kind of loud. Um,
No, you're
but
good.
um, so some people don't like to think about the past, but uh, others will, think about it, and kind of that helps them focus on their story to finding them truth, that true self. So
Mm,
a speech would be good, and they can tailor it individual, each
mhm,
person's going to do it in a different manner.
mhm. What about, I was thinking about this. What about something to do with wardrobe? Like maybe putting on something or going and changing into something as like a chrysalis kind of emergence of the self emerging in the true gender of that person.
that one, I'm probably like landing between. Yes, it's a good idea, and I think, um, and then you'll have certain people that may still dress more. Because like me, I'm very in between. I like to do many different styles, so you probably on that one you'd probably have to find the person's style of dressing. You know, but
Right.
that could be good because the transgender population really focus on butterflies. And like you said, a chrysalis is when the caterpillars turning into that butterfly. And a lot of
Hmm.
trans people will focus on getting like will get like butterfly tattoos, or because it definitely shows that symbolism of that transition.
Interesting.
So yeah.
Interesting. I like that. I hear a couple ideas there. I'm going to throw this out at you. That I really like the idea. We've been talking among with me and the directors about possibility that there may be sacraments of the Church of Korihor that involve getting a tattoo, and
Right.
lots of indigenous cultures. That's the purpose of tattoos is to like a rite of passage or something like that. Maybe there's an element we can include that in there. Is like, would you maybe like to get like a butterfly tattoo or your name or something like that as part of that experience?
No, that would be good. I mean, like me, I have 3 tattoos, and they're all focused about accomplishments in my life. So I used to be, like now I'm a nurse, but I used to be a paramedic before. So my
Okay.
first one is on my left shoulder, and it is that star of life that's put on every ambulance, that blue star.
Sure.
And of all places where I got it was in Salt Lake City. So um, not many people focus on getting a tattoo in Salt Lake on a honeymoon of all things. And then
Oh
I
wow.
have one here that I don't know if you can see it.
A
It
little
is a
bit.
triathlon tattoo for
All right.
focusing on triathlon
Okay.
that I've accomplished, and I still do. Um, and then I have my arrow, and I like to do archery, but an arrow is also very symbolic in that sometimes life tries to pull you back, but like an arrow, and it does it slowly, but when it's let go, an arrow goes much faster. So uh, that's, every tattoo I have has to be symbolic towards me. And I think that
Hmm.
that would be a great idea.
The other thing, I love that. Another thing that you made me think about with this thing that I didn't know about, frankly, about that a lot of trans people focus on the symbolism of butterflies, because like right now we've been calling this ceremony either name ceremony or aurora, because aurora is Latin for dawn. But I'm
Right.
not passionate about the name. Frankly, Aurora feels a bit of a mouthful. I mean, it looks beautiful, but to say it, that feels a little redundant. Feels like a mouthful. And so I wonder if, like, well, is a better name something focused on that symbolism, like a chrysalis, or like what
Yeah,
would something like that be a good idea?
that would be a good idea. Something that, would symbolize that transition or that move forward, you know, kind of like I said, my arrow does symbolize, at times being pulled back, but then moving forward.
Mhm.
And, um, something like that, because people a lot of times when they're transitioning will feel, like at times like they're being pulled back. So, the chrysalis is a great idea because you're uh, showing that transformation and focusing on that transformation.
Cool, 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 cool. Well, so far, I think we're doing really great here. I do want to talk about you and your experience as a fellow ex Mormon. and get just kind of like a little taste of what your story is, and talk a little bit about your channel. People can find Jules' Cash App link in the or Cash App name, I guess, or handle, or whatever it is, in the description of the video. And then, of course, you'll find the link to Jules' YouTube channel. Please go and subscribe. I saw your first video, Jules, and the first of your videos that I saw, I said, oh, instant subscribe. I like this. This is good stuff. This is the kind of content we need. More ex-Mormon creators who have the courage and who have the strength to be vulnerable and share this story and be courageous. Because I went from that video to watching one of your lives and saw how frequently you wind up with, you have people who support you who are great. You got about 500, a little over 500 supporters now, subscribers. That's awesome. But the other side is that it's like every live of yours that I've watched, you get random transphobes that just drop in out of the internet. And I'm like, my gosh, what a pressure on you. I mean, do you ever get just sick of it?
I do get sick of it, but the best thing is to remain calm. And I was an emergency room nurse for 13 years. And where I got to learn, the big thing that I learned there was when we would get combative patients. And with combative patients, if you turned it up a notch, they would turn it up too. And then if you tried to up them, they would try to up you again. So another nurse taught me to talk down, focus them in the eyes, and it seemed to work. Because if you're not trying to beat them, and you try to just talk at a, even tone, they tend to calm down. So that's what I try to do on the channel.
And it's interesting. So there's a de-escalating tone that nurses use that could be useful for people who are transitioning, have to deal with these transphobes, because they can get violent, rowdy, obnoxious, and just rude as rude can be, which is, perhaps not surprising to me, is almost every time I've seen it happen, then they immediately come down. Their criticism is God and hell. It's like God will judge you at the final judgment. Hell is coming for you, blah, blah, blah. And just the irony, besides the rudeness, the irony of you are telling somebody, some stranger, forgive me if this is triggering, saying things like ugly or using or misgendering you, or, saying these rude, hurtful, sometimes scary things. And it's like, and then saying, but God loves you.
Yeah, and the big thing I always tell them, especially when a lot of them come in through, with godly messages, I tell them right away, I've been through 2 major religions. No need to, try to tell me, what is, I'm doing. I have, I've read the Bible, and then I tell them, I've also been through the Mormon Church, so I've read other scriptures, and then I tell them, I'm like, show me, things that I always focus like on Noah's Ark. I'm like, if we have found so much through archaeology, I'm like, that would have to be such a big boat to put 2 of each animal in. I'm like, where is it? You think you would have found something by now. I know there's claims that they found where it was at, but there's no physical evidence of the actual ark. Or when they start with the transphobe part, I always tell them, I'm like, okay, so God created Adam. I'm like, then he took part of Adam and made a woman. And I'm like, well, wouldn't that be a transgender form of Adam? That's the biggest challenge I give them. And they're like always telling me to go back and try to, get my story straight, or, you know, but you know, I always try to give them I don't want to challenge them too much, but I do want to give them, kind of challenge them in a little bit, and I think the other day I had someone really to the point where they calmed down before my moderators didn't even have to uh, block them, but I think finally I put doubt in them. I think, it's like when you start putting certain things, because it was like all their excuses, oh no, you need to go read. You need to go read. Like, or you're acting like a baby. It was just kind of arguments back, but never gave me one to justify what they wanted to hear. you know?
Yeah, this is probably a toxic joke, but I tell people about the story of Korihor, which I'm sure you know, having read the Book of Mormon. But Korihor was an atheist from the Book of Mormon, who was, we call him the martyr of reason, because he was starved and trampled to death by the apathy of Christians and who are celebrated for that fact. That's the weirdest thing. But he wins 3 debates with major Christian preachers in his society, and for that he is punished. But it's like you look at it and you go, okay, do you not what do you not get here, people? This is everything that's wrong with Mormonism. But the thing that's interesting about that is it says that he caused many women, and yea, also the men, to commit, yea, and even men, or something like that, to commit many whoredoms. And I went, wait a minute. We had to conclude, and even men to commit whoredoms. Who were the whoredoms being committed with if it was just women? Like, is this all lesbian whoredoms? I mean, I'm not saying that women won't pay for sex with other women, but it's not a great business model. I mean, you think about it, you get women paying to have sex with women. It's only so long before they before they run away together and start raising pit bulls in the mountains or something. I mean, it's like, this is not a good business model. But it's like, it's interesting because it's like, wait a minute. So if the workers are selling the work, are they the only ones committing whoredoms? Because that's not how I understood whoredoms to be. Because like the John is also committing the whoredom, I thought. And it's like, why the inclusion of also the men? It's like there's all this gendered thinking in the way scripture works, that it just seems to me like, if you are a trans person, and if because a lot of trans people don't realize maybe fully that they are trans for years, but I think a lot of them, from my experience talking to them, they've known in some cases, people known for decades, or they've known all along. This isn't my body. This isn't my gender. These aren't my pronouns. This isn't my name. And so it's like, to be a transgender person and read these gendered passages of scripture, it just seems to me like it puts a whole layer of complexity that it doesn't for cisgender people. Does that seem familiar to you?
Yeah. I mean, it just seems like that for cisgender people. They don't. I think they don't just understand the whole concept, and that you could probably find, and I think the whole thing about biblical and Book of Mormon passages, it's all like we keep talking about today. It's to an individual. Everybody's going to read one passage, and it's going to mean a different thing to everybody. We're not going to, all agree on one thing. And then one of the biggest things I get with all these people, I'm like, why can't we all be if we wanted to be following a religion or a church, why can't we be in one unified? Why is there so many versions of the Bible? Why are there books missing from it when we know that certain books were there? Like, I always bring up the book of Lilith, which is supposed to be the second wife of Adam. And people are like, oh, where are you coming up with this? When it's out there.
You made that up. That's my favorite criticism from like the Mormons. Oh, you made that up. It's like, why would I make that up? As if you can't just go and check. It's if you don't have the collected body of all of human knowledge available in the palm of your hand at any minute. Why would I make that up?
Okay, yeah, that's the whole thing. It's right there on the internet, and and I watched it on like History Channel. That's where I found out about it, and then even the organization of Christianity was actually done by Constantine, which was a pagan. You know, he just kind of heard teachings about this one person, and he kind of create it was the Council of Nicaea, and he got together and said, "Oh, we're going to take these teachings, these teachings, these teachings, put them together, and we'll form, you know, a religion that follows this book that we put together." You know, and uh, people don't believe that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot about early Christianity that you would shock Christians if they actually bothered to look at early Christianity. I mean, so much.
Yeah.
We don't have to, and a lot of it has to do with gender and gender identity and consent,
Mm-hmm.
which is it's curious to me because like when people talk about this topic, they talk about the morals of Christianity and especially the morals around sex, right? And I look at it and I think,
Right.
and yet some of the most moral beings that I know are trans or are gay, or at least not straight,
Right.
because
Mm-hmm.
queer folk are very passionate in my experience. Not all of them. I mean, there's some who are toxic, as there are all kinds of people who are toxic. But most of them I know are crusaders for consent, and in a way
Correct.
that I find admirable. And I'm like, if there's any morality around sexuality or sex, it's got to be about consent. Am I wrong?
No, that is very well said, because a lot of the things on my channel that I focus on, it's all about consent. Just on the transition portion of it, if I keep my channel at 18 and over, because all the stuff that's going on around the trans community, and minors being focusing on transition. So I just want to be safe with my channel, but then I'll get the ones that turn around and use someone's account and they're younger than 18. When they ask, I'm like, no, you have to, focus on consent from your parents. You can't just go out and get. Although I know the clinic where I go to, I think they would help minors, but I think with consent. I think another thing is focusing on my teaching, what I call teaching and / tips, and where I focus on high demand religions mainly, and I'm focusing on the Mormon Church, which I've left now. I'm focusing a lot about people getting consent, and focusing on learning everything before they give consent to the missionaries. Yes, baptize me. Because I remember my experience, and it was they want to baptize you quick, because then you don't find out about all the other loopholes, I would say, that are in there.
That was your experience with what you call the flirt to convert experience, right? Can you tell me about that?
Yes. So I remember going to the stake center with I used to coach swimming back then, and it was a family on my swim team that invited me. Mom was going to get 2 of the kids baptized. They had already been, or were 8 and older. And I went, first of all, when I got there, like everybody, a bunch of people I'd gone to high school were members, which I never realized. My high school guidance counselor was the stake president. So a couple of missionaries approached me, and it was, elders. When I went over to my friend's house, when she said, that the kids were going to start discussions, I didn't know that they were going to start discussions with me. They were just, the missionaries were going to be there. And I thought it was going to be more, like I'd grown up in the Catholic Church. You usually have godparents or, sponsors like some other. And I thought, oh, she's invited me because she wants me to be the kid's, godparent, sponsor, whatever. And no, they start talking to me. I remember, but when I got there were two beautiful young ladies. And I was like, to the point where I was in nursing school at the time, and I had a study companion, and she was part of the Mormon church. And I went to her, and from hearing everything they talked about that day, I heard about P Day. So I went to my friend at school. I'm like, I said, I know that missionaries have a day off. I'm like, can they date during that time? And she was like, no. But it was just because, these two beautiful young ladies were there. And I was like, oh, wow. I wouldn't mind, you know, going out with one of them. But it was obviously that. I think they focus on the laws of attraction. And I've heard they do that a lot. That's one of their methods.
I mean, I'll cop to a little bit of that. I guess when I was a missionary, I didn't really think of it that way, but I can certainly see it now. But yeah, no, like there were young women that I converted in Peru. Mostly we would try to, we were asked to pawn them off on the sister missionaries, which is, was a great way to lose converts because a lot of times the sister missionaries just didn't want to teach people they hadn't found, or it was inconvenient because they lived in a different area and had to travel really far and, things like that. So it was, if you've seen the movie, those people at home there will remember I've talked about this before, how much I appreciate the film Heretic that just came out. But in the film Heretic, I haven't seen it. Oh, okay. Well, I won't spoil too much for you, but it's good. It's good. If you like thrillers, it's not really that scary. People talk about it's not scary. It's more of a thriller. You get more jump scares in Alien, frankly. So it's not that big. It's not that scary. But the thing that happens is that they won't come into the house with this man because they can't teach him alone, and unless they know there's another woman present because they're sister missionaries, and that was our rule too. So we would often have to find somebody from the young woman's family, or even the women. I will never forget. I had to tell a sister because she's like, "Well, why do we have to bother with that?" And I'm like, "Well, it's for safety reasons and for the safety of liability for the church." And she's like, "What?" I'm like, "In case accusations happen or something." She's like that. I'm afraid you guys might hurt me. And I'm like, "Yeah, something like that." And I'm like, this just keeps everybody safe. And she's like, I'm not scared. I'm like, I'm not either. But it's, rules is rules. So, but it's interesting because in my book, The Korihor Argument, I talk about my experience on my mission and how I kind of fell for one of my investigators. Her name was Coney. And she was beautiful. She was a doctor. She was very sweet. And every time I met eyes with this girl, this young woman, it was like, there was chemistry. It's like, it's one of those rare moments where you're like, I knew she felt it, she knew, and she knew I felt it. And then my zone leader said, you're giving that girl over to the sister missionaries. And I was like, why? We're following all the rules. And he's like, she's in love with you. You're in love with her. I don't know what you're talking about. But there was something to that, to say, we'd often get comments from people saying, where's Elder so-and-so? Do you know Elder so-and-so back in the States? It's like, there are millions of Mormons, lady. I don't know all of them. And they'd be like, he was so sweet to me. And he was so handsome. And he was so blah, blah, blah. And then he went home to finish his mission. And I asked him, when are you coming back? And he's like, I'm not. And it was just gone. And there were a lot of broken hearts. I mean, we left a trail of broken hearts, frankly. We really did. So, I mean, there's something to say for the sexualizing of, what do you call it, of preaching. So luckily in the Church
Right.
of Korhor, we don't really preach to strangers, and our missionaries, instead of going, who wear stoles like this one, instead of going
Right.
out and knocking on people's doors, we put blankets on people and feed them, people
Right.
who are unhoused. So anyways, tell me a little bit about, because I have so many questions about your experience, and maybe we'll have a chance to talk about it more at length. But I sure would love for you to get on, I don't know, a Letter Daily Digest, or maybe even Mormon Stories, and tell your whole story. But I am curious why you left the Mormon Church, and what role, if any, your transition played in that.
Okay, so really, I think from the very beginning, I was kind of doubtful. I think even the missionaries picked up on it because they said when they asked me to get baptized, which is what I was still when there were 6 discussions, uh, they would ask you at discussion number 2. So they asked me then, and I kind of like hesitated. But I think by number 4, where they teach the word of wisdom, I kind of got my signal that maybe I should. But I think when things started progressing, certain things that started being said, and when I moved to Florida was a big thing because I was baptized in San Diego. Uh, there were like the things when like temple came along and certain things that people would state in classes. Um, Obviously, when talking about the temple, it's when you first go in and they always say, leave now, basically, if you feel uncomfortable. But of course, they say that before the uncomfortable stuff happens, and
Right.
and so you continue with you know, the ceremony, and then you get to like the prayer circle, which, you know, definitely feels culty. Yeah,
Oh
so
yeah. Oh yeah. And I'll just say this, I'll interject this. I don't want to interrupt you, but it's too good. It's like, that's not enthusiastic consent, brethren. Enthusiastic
no,
consent, you can rescind consent at any time. So there, if you were going to be progressive there, old Rusty Nelson, if you can hear me, Rusty Nelson, here's how you make it enthusiastic consent. Instead of leave now, it's leave anytime you like. Nobody's guarding the door.
right, right, and and then came, when we started being more on the internet, all of us, we started using it more. I started finding a lot of information, but it became that good old shelf, um, example. Every
The
time I
shelf
would find
breaker.
something, yep, I would put it, just turn around and just put it away. Like say, this is coming along because it's challenging me, but you know what? It just makes my testimony bigger, stronger. I know when I still worked in San Diego, I worked with a guy, and he brought up the Mark Hoffman stuff. He brought up
Oh
about
boy.
the, you know, he brought up, oh no, haven't you ever heard the story with Joseph Smith being uh, bitten by the white salamander 3 times? And I'm like, white salamander? So I
That
looked it up
wasn't in the first
online.
discussion, right, brethren? That's not in. There's nothing about the
No.
salamander in the in the first discussion. Maybe revise that a little bit.
So I kind of read it. I mean, the white salamander letter is very hard reading because it's like out there. And so when I started reading about it, um, it was just okay. So it was just like throw it on the shelf. It's just gives me more testimony. Then I used to sit on the internet a lot, and then like one day I come across the God Makers film, by Ed Decker, and I kind of watched it, and I used to always talk to this gentleman when I worked in the emergency room, and he was gay, and he would tell me, he's all, oh yeah, the Mormon Church used to have all these problems with Coca-Cola, and when you watch the God Makers, there is actually a little part that shows them say something about Coca-Cola or in an illustration. And I was like, and that's one thing I've never found online about the church and Coca-Cola, their conflict. But once again, I found that I watched number 1 and number 2 of the God Makers. And I said, oh, all this is not true on the shelf. And so I kept finding information, And the funny thing is, years later, I traveled here to New Mexico. I live in Albuquerque now. And I took a class in Socorro, New Mexico. It's a little small town, 6,000 people. It was with the government because I worked for the U.S. government. And it was a class because I used to be on a disaster response team. Well, when you respond to disasters, it can be natural or man-made. And this class started after 9/11. They started teaching it, and it was about bombings. So they were talking about historical bombings. And I think 2 that had to do with Mormons came up, or even religious sects, about 3. So they came up with the salamander bombings. They come out, I think there was the Singer Swamp ones in Utah, which hardly anybody knows about. And then the other thing that was a religious sect was obviously Ruby Ridge. And, so, the whole, like I said, the salamander thing was one thing to put on the shelf. The God Makers, like all these things that kept coming up online that were saying, oh, this church is not true, or these parts of it aren't true. It was just always, oh, challenge the faith, but you know what? It makes me stronger. And then it was, I got my daughter baptized. And I think it's kind of, when she got baptized, it started kind of leading me astray because I think she wasn't so much into it. And finally she became a teenager. She said, Dad, can I stop going? And I said, sure. And then I kind of started testing it myself and, found that many things aren't true. And there's so many things that you read that contradict each other. And how many versions of the first vision there are. And, even throwing in the salamander letter, it was, a big thing. So it started challenging me more. And then, I moved out here to New Mexico, started doing more research. Then I, like I said, I found many Exmos. Like you said, Mormon stories. I found Exmo Lex, I think was the first one I found.
Great.
Yeah, she's awesome. And I think I started watching her from she was still in her garage in her minivan.
I remember it. I remember it very well.
Yeah, and so it just started building up, and there are all these things that I realized that I had thought about in the past, and then my true shelf breaker just finally I said, I had already started thinking of writing my letter of resignation, but then finally that true shelf breaker was when I was watching John DeLynn and on Mormon Stories, and came that new trans policy, and I was like, okay, that's it. I have to send in my letter of resignation, definitely. So I've been looking at different form letters. I think Cara Burrell has one on her channel. So I've been, I have to do that, get it notarized, send it into Salt Lake. Because they said, don't send it to the stake because then they'll start knocking at your door. And, but sure enough, I've, the shelf breaker's it's been broken,
Right.
And
that was fairly recently then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I had already thought of doing that letter of resignation, but now it's definite because of that. recent policy. And I put it as a tab on my podcasts or on my channel all the time on my videos.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, what a journey. So you have been a member still of record on the church even since your transition, right? Or since you
Technically
started
I'm
to.
still technically still a member of record. I've had, since I moved to New Mexico, it's strange. I've only had the missionaries knock twice. Once they showed up and I had COVID of all things. So it was perfect because I opened the door and was, oh guys, I'm sick, and they're all, oh, do you want a blessing? But they didn't ask me by name or anything, or they didn't even say blessing. They said, oh, would you like to say a prayer with us? And I'm like, no, they didn't, and they didn't ask for my, for me by name or anything. So I don't know if they know that I'm a, member still of record.
Wow.
And then they showed up another time. I just didn't answer the door.
Right. I must have gotten on their bad list because I told enough poor missionaries, especially the elders, when they come by, and I'm like, listen to me, okay? I've been where you are. I was 23 years ago. I've been an atheist for 23 years. I did what you're doing, but I did in the Amazon jungle. You ever want to know the truth about your church and the truth about what your options are? And they're like, so we're going to go? Like, let's go. No problem. Like, do you want to see my excommunication letter? Do you want to see the letter where I was excommunicated with? And they're like, no, we're good. Okay. So that's So your shelf breaker didn't sound like it really had anything to do with your transitioning, or did it? Maybe I just missed it.
No, I think it just added to it. I think it was just so much of the stuff I was finding in information was just pointing to the church just giving misinformation. And then I started finding out about their finances, because before I thought, oh yeah, they use it for the proper things, because there were several times that we got church assistance, my ex-wife and I. And and I mean, for a while it was like they were paying up to our rent. So I was like, oh yeah, they're using the tithing and the fast offerings for the correct things. And then I found out about the church budget and how much money they have. And then you start looking at it, they're worth more than Exxon, which is an oil company you got to think about, more than like Wells Fargo, a banking company. And you're like,
they can pay everybody's rent.
they could pay everybody's rent. They're like, it's $300 billion that they're worth. Right. They say what, 10 years and they'll be at $1 trillion. It's like, and I'm like, no. I'm like, yeah. And I hear now they're even giving less to other people. The people currently in the church, they're encouraging them to go out for government assistance.
Wow. And it's like when they have so much, and then at the same time, they've had so many people leaving, and so many people leaving activity in the church, if not leaving the church, that now that here in Utah, they're selling buildings all over the place. I've been telling people for a while, we're going to buy some of these buildings. If the church doesn't stop us from doing it, we're going to buy one of these buildings and make it into an all-night library, and then people can come in and read all night. And when it's cold outside and you have people who are cold outside, they can come in and read a book all night long. Make a little comfy reading nook where you can go read all night. It's like, do you want a blanket? Everybody needs a cozy blanket and a pillow while you're reading a good book. I love one. You go in there, here, take a pillow, take a blanket, and then when they come by to ask what's going on in here, you say,
it's take a comforter, just like the churches.
That's right. This is the third comforter, brethren. We're just giving it out. This is our calling. This is our ecumenical calling, sir. We are preaching people. Don't tell us we can't have people reading all night in the cold when it's cold outside. So yeah, but so okay, so it's interesting. Cody. So you were married. I know we don't have a lot of time to go into this whole story, but so you were married to a
Right.
woman. I don't know if you're
Yeah.
still attracted to women or if who you're attracted to.
Yeah.
And if you don't
Yeah.
have to tell me
Women.
that if
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
okay.
No,
So okay,
I'm forward. Still attracted to women.
okay.
So
And did your ex-wife, how much did she know about? Was she first of all was she LDS? And how much did she know about your transition? How did that affect you?
okay. Well, here's how it goes. Actually, I've been through two marriages. So my
Okay.
first wife, when I met her, she was technically still married. So uh, we met in nursing school.
Naughty, naughty,
And
naughty.
yeah, we met in nursing school. And I was dating a girl already that I had met when I worked at SeaWorld in San Diego. But I met this other young lady. So I was, dating two, but one was
You're a
married.
ladies lady, man. You out there just getting it.
And then it turns out, so she got divorced, but, you know, Bishop finds out. And I thought, oh, great. So then Bishop pulled me in the office, and he goes, oh, he's all, I think you'll be okay. You won't have to, I won't even exclude you from the sacrament any meetings. And this
Whoa.
was a bishop that, yeah,
You
he's all, I
won a
wouldn't,
priesthood roulette. Man, that's winning.
which kind of now thinking back at it, I found it kind of awkward because he was in the Marine Corps and he was a bishop. So I was like, military people are very strict. They have to follow these rules in the military, and then you got a bishop. I thought that seems kind of awkward, So then me and this first wife I had, yeah, we had a daughter. We moved out to Florida, and in Florida we got sealed in the temple, and then we got divorced, and then she went off to another church, and then I remarried with another person that I met at the hospital, and she's a nurse now. At that time, she was just a tech, and technically we're still married, but we just have our, kind of went our separate ways, and you know, we separated, and then eventually I was working with the VA in Florida, and VA makes it very easy to transfer places. You know, it's the government, so it's my Florida license. I can use it in any U.S. territory. So I've been wanting to move to New Mexico after taking that trip out here. I'm like, I'm going to take many chances at it. And
Cool.
we were already separated. We were still living in the same household, but you know, when she did find out I was trans, oh my goodness, that was, you know, it just set off a, we were just talking about Mark Hoffman instead of one of his
Cool.
bonds. That just blew up. And
She
on
had no
top of
idea.
that, yeah,
Wow.
because on top of that, I'd come out to her and see the thing is um with sexuality and gender, a lot of times it can be fluid. And like
Hmm.
with my sexuality, first I came out bisexual to her, and she was cool about that. On top of that, she was very, very liberal. But when she found some women's clothing, you know, that weren't hers, and I told her they were mine, oh boy, she's all, well, I don't, that's a no-no. And I'm like, here you are, like strong liberal. I mean, if I mentioned anything, I was a strong conservative for a long time.
Mm.
Probably till and and I it was all of a sudden, she was like, boom. And issue that you would think that she would defend. No,
Wow. Maybe
you
she
know,
would defend it for other people, but when it's you, then all of a
Cor-
sudden the standard is
correct.
different.
Because I saw her order some eyeglass frames, and they were actually in pride colors. And I looked them up online because she ordered from these online companies, and they would actually support pride. So I was like, this doesn't make sense, you know?
There's a
It's
little bit
just
of hypocrisy. I mean, everything tastes better with hypocrisy pie. Wow, that's amazing. That's remarkable. Wow. But so she had no idea. You're the second person I've heard this story of the wife finds the clothes. I had thought that was pretty interesting. I don't know if you know about the story of Lori Hall. She had a Mormon Stories
No.
episode series. She was a temple architect for the Mormon Church who was
Oh,
trans.
yeah. I've heard,
You
I
heard
know who
about?
she
Okay.
is, but
Yeah.
I've never
She
heard her story.
Oh my gosh. Well, you'd find a lot there. I don't know if you'd find it triggering, but you'd find a lot very familiar there because she talks about storing women's clothes that she bought for herself for years, and then her
Mhm.
LDS wife found them and did the whole thing. Whose are these? And she's like, they're mine. And she's like, stop around. Whose are they? They're mine. That's so
Yeah,
hard.
I think it wasn't so much with my second wife. It wasn't so much like whose are these. She would like call it some, call it like she would say, "Why do you have this drag stuff?" Which drag queens, it's something completely different. That's more of a performing art, and like everything's such more exaggerated as far as like makeup and all of that. And then she used the word transvestite at one, which is an outdated word, you know? So it was some of the things that she, came out was just, it was horrible because I think she didn't know enough about it.
It is interesting how you can leave the toxicity of one of like the straight cishet culture and in a culture and a group in a time when people pride themselves on being progressive, there are some people
Mm-hmm.
you quickly discover are toxic to some extent, or because either they're still learning or because being supportive of pride and things like that is more, for some people it's more of a fashion statement or it's more of a social status. It's a,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like you don't want to call them out too hard. I find for me, I don't want to call them out too hard on things because it's like we need all the support going to the communities, to marginalized people as we can get. But people using your identity and using pride, particularly as like a fashion accessory, I
Right.
mean, it does infuriate you a little bit. It does put fire in you. Go, how dare you?
Well, I think you can even put that back onto like the pink ribbon for breast cancer. How many companies did not profit from that? You started seeing pink things, appliances and stuff at stores or anything in pink. Why? Because they were using it to draw attention, and there wasn't much going to them. I think it goes to the same thing. It was just kind of like a fashion statement,
Right,
unless you were someone that did suffer from breast cancer,
right.
you know?
That becomes a way of coding. It becomes a way of using a serious social movement and a social need to to mask profit in corporate giving. And it's like, wow,
Yeah.
hate that. Yeah, been there. I'm familiar with. Let's see. We've gone for an hour now. I feel like we just barely got started. Of course, you still have so much of your story to tell, but I do want to, as I told you before we started, I'd like to save that for some bigger channel because I think that there's a possibility. There's a lot of people who need to hear your story, Jules, and I really am appreciative that there is someone like you out there, that you're a part of our community, not just as ex-Mormons or atheists, but that
Right.
you're a part of our world, that you're here with us and you are sharing your story. We need your voice, and I haven't heard enough of it yet. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet?
Well, I mean, the big thing on my channel, I think, and a lot of my viewers do say, a lot of my subs, especially my regular ones, a lot of them are trans also. And my big thing is about being an advocate for them. You know, I don't think there's enough people advocating for the trans community. Yes, I see other people, uh, that I watch regularly, that yes, do advocate also, but that's my big focus. It all goes back to my job. As a nurse, I'm not just there to heal wounds or to take care of the disease process. I'm there to advocate for my patients, because if I notice, hey, they're getting this medicine, but they can, get better from this one. What am I should be the advocate to go tell a doctor.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with being trans. I want to be that person that makes a difference. You know, there's a I know there's many people that have different channels. They focus on different topics, and yeah, there's a lot that do. There's a young lady, her name's Samantha Lux, big on advocacy. She like watches the news, and what things can happen, especially with the new presidency coming in, all of that. She's really really good at that.
Mm.
Um, and there's other people I watch that are big on being advocates for our community, which is what focus I have on my channel, along with you know all my other topics, along with in my leaving the Mormon Church. Also, um, I like to work on my vehicle. Like I said, I like to do triathlon. I like to share my whole life.
I love that. You had talked about you. I've heard you describe this a few times about your
Mhm.
channel. This 5T1 area 5T1. What
Mhm.
is 5T1? What does that mean?
Okay, well, uh, I'm a big Alien fan. You can see I have a little Area 51 sign. I don't know how clear it is on your channel. I have an Area
Mhm.
51 sign back there. So throughout my life, one of the big numbers that's always jumped out in my life has always been the number 51. So I'll just give a few examples. When I was young, uh, my biggest and most favorite TV show was Emergency, with Roy DeSoto, um, I can't, and watching Emergency One, two medics on the road. It was my favorite show growing up,
Hmm.
and that's what made me focus on becoming one. And then later on, um, I internet came along. My first email address, and I put in my name, and it gives me J, my last name, and then just randomly gives me a 51 on there at hotmail.com. I was like, okay, that's strange. I ended up becoming a road medic. I Then I went to work at a pharmaceutical research center at one point, and they made me the training coordinator. So anybody that would come in would be trained by me. And as we had gotten new offices, and they said, this is going to be your classroom and your office. They were putting signs on the outside of everything, so the people that were wiring internet and stuff knew where to put who was internet where. And mine was 51. the sign on it was 51, and then gained the nickname Area 51. I came out at age 51. So when I was creating my channel, I decided I want to call it Area 50, like Area 51, but I decided I can't call it that because it's obviously, someone may say you're copying or, so I decided I called it Area 5T1, and I started to focus on what can I talk about? I can come up with 5Ts. So what I came up with, and they've changed over time because of topics. So I came up with transition, obviously. I talk about, I have a small playlist about triathlon, but I haven't been training a lot lately, but I need to get back on that. And then I talk about trends, which are like the different clothing I've liked to wear. And then I started on my teaching portion, which is focusing on, the basics of the Mormon church. Like right now I'm teaching the Gospel Principles book because I feel people need to know the basic. Then we can go out to the outlandish, crazy stuff. And then I had, then I got my vehicle because I used to have tips in there, but then I kind of feel that teaching and tips is together. And then I got my vehicle, so I said trucks. So that's where I do videos on what I do to my Xterra. And in fact, like today, I've been filming one, changing camshaft sensors. And I still need to do one tomorrow, like editing to edit, because I'm still adding to that. I got to do one more camshaft sensor. So that's where the 5Ts kind of came in. And, as you can see, I do have a lot of alien memorabilia here. I have, neon lights and alien forms. I could call this collab if I wanted to. No. And then and then I got my Area 51 sign. I actually have an elf plush doll over here that I have from the 1990s.
Oh man!
So, that's kind of where the Area 5T1 came from. Kind of a bunch of 51s throughout my life. I'm like, that's my lucky number. That's why I do things in increments of 50 on my channel.
Right. Right. Yeah, I was there when you got 510 subscribers, and you announced some celebration that you're planning to do to celebrate 510 subscribers, right?
Yeah, I have a little backpack here. And I've done it a couple of times, and everybody doesn't claim it every time I do it. So I just add more stuff to it because it's like almost like a little survival backpack. It's probably a little bit of still a little bit of what we learned in the church about preparation, food storage. But I lived in Florida for 23 years. I learned that yes, you should have some preparation because you never know when you're going to have to evacuate when that hurricane hits. I've gone through 6 major hurricanes, and I was always prepared, but we never evacuated. And I had 3 of these little backpacks ready for everybody. They're military style, and in the military you can add attachments to them. So on the one I have here that's going to be given away to a subscriber, it's got an individual first aid kit and a canteen attached to it. And I made the first aid kit myself. Well, I got the bag, but then what I did was fill it up. And, it's all out of my own pocket, everything. And basically, when I think tomorrow I'm going to make a video, give the instructions on how people can enter, and then just do a drawing out of a hat on either a live or on a video and give it away, and last time someone just wrote me back and they're all, I don't want it. They're all, you can give it away on the next one. So I'm like, okay. And here it sits. But
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I sure have appreciated this time with you, Jules. I just barely discovered your
no
channel
problem.
2 days ago, and I said, I got to have more of this in my life. And I hope that all of you folks out there at the agency and the Church of Korihor, if you're out there, wherever you are out there, then, please follow Jules' link in the description to her channel, to her YouTube channel. You'll find her Cash App there, so you can help to purchase more equipment for her channel and to help to support her work and keep her making more content, because we need her voice. And I sure do want to thank you. I want to honor you, Jules, for this journey that you are on. And I appreciate you sharing with me your voice and telling us a little bit more about how we can celebrate trans people.
No problem. I do thank you for having me here on the channel. It's been a pleasure. I think we've had, excellent conversation. And, I'm here for whoever wants to, like you said, join my channel. They can like, subscribe, comment in here. I'll also encourage my viewers to, head your way, because, like, I have a lot of viewers. Yes, they're out of, have left a religion, or, I think I have some XJWs, and I tell them, I'll send them, to watch your channel, because it's informative, and I talk about it a lot on my channel about being out of a church and what can happen and all that. So I will definitely send, if my subs are watching this, I encourage everyone to go watch Hellfire Agency. It, they lots of great information there. So
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
no
Well,
problem.
once again, friends who are watching live, if you are looking for a good sermon to hear tomorrow, I cannot stress enough how great it's going to be to hear from our director, Jenny Gage from Life Take Two, who is hopefully going to still be able to make it tomorrow, 10 a.m. Utah time. And we'll be going live and preaching the good word of the light of reason. I thank Jules Treasures for being here with us again today. And to all of you out there, fight like hellfire.
Okay, you have